Let's talk about the minor leagues. Let's talk about the new guys that are on board and the projection of hitters, pitchers, people that might contribute in 2025 with our friend Kenny Van Dorren of Astros Future. Let's get started right now.
Jainel Diaz, this is Locked On Astros.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Brett Htown Wheelhouse Chancey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros. We update you joins for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on X at Eric Astros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at Htown Wheelhouse on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Stros411. That's Stros with a Z at Instagram and Facebook, and at Back to the Bullpen with Mike Stanton on X, Instagram, TikTok. Well, not TikTok, sorry. YouTube and iHeartRadio. Look, I'm always positive, always Stros. We got our friend with us, the man, the myth, the legend. We have Kenny Van Dorren of Astros Future. Kenny, thanks for joining us. Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on X at the Vandalorian. I'm not really posting much Astros content right now, but once the season starts going again, I'll make sure to do that. But follow Jimmy Price as well at Astros Future. We got podcasts on there, and he wants to get that back up going when the season starts.
Hey guys, thank you for making us your first listen, whether it's on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Go ahead and check us out. Go ahead and make us your first listen. Go ahead and subscribe to us. We're trying to get to 14,000 subscribers and beyond. So go ahead and hit that little red button down there and go and give us a big fat thumbs up while you're at it. And we're going to go and keep you informed as much as we can through this whole crazy off season that's probably going to make us lose our minds and pray for spring training start, because maybe that's when we'll get some sense of sanity. But I don't think we're going to get anything settled before spring training. I think that the Alex Bregman saga is going to go probably into spring training at this rate. I don't know if Alex Bregman is going to get what he's looking for. And right now, I know that the Ryan Pressly trade was made official today, and we could talk about the prospect that the Astros got. They did send $5.5 million to the Cubs in that deal. This does open up some cap room for them to maybe make another addition. But Dana Brown said some interesting things today, and sometimes I kind of wished he wouldn't say some stuff. Like, he didn't have to talk about the bad blood between him and Pressly. I mean, we all knew it was there, but you didn't have to kind of let the elephant out of the room there. But he also mentioned, we could talk about that in another show, Brett, but he did mention about Altuve. They're possibly going to try him out there no matter what and see what he looks like. If he looks good, this could maybe be a way to offer some roster flexibility. So maybe if they do bring in somebody like Jorge Polanco, this is probably going to block some more prospects.
Yeah, Kenny, I would like to get your take on this because you grade prospects, all right? You know prospects better than we do. If we're grading Altuve, he's not going to be a top flight prospect in the outfield. But if he's declining defensively, does this make sense? And if they don't bring back Bregman, is that better for some of our prospects that are looking to make it sooner rather than later?
I don't think so. I mean, if in the case that Bregman's not going to come back and push, Altuve out of the infield, because you just have to shuffle some guys around. I think a better spot for some of these guys that are in the minor league system is probably in the outfield at this rate. I mean, you have Jeremy Pena, who's won a Gold Glove at shortstop. I mean, the bat hasn't been as consistent as it was in his rookie season, but he's still kind of holding down that spot. And if you bring Bregman back and lock him up in that third base spot, a lot of those infield prospects that are coming up don't really have a set in stone spot, and they can probably plug in the outfield. A lot of shortstops are very athletic. You look at Bryce Matthews. I don't think the conversation has been made yet if they want to throw him out in the outfield, but a lot of shortstops move to the center field. They move to the outfield. So if there's an opportunity to do that, I mean, Zach DeZenza was drafted as a shortstop out of Ohio State. And now they're looking at him as a guy that can probably get reps in the outfield. And they did that this past season when they brought him up to the majors and for that kind of short stint there in August and September. So that's what they can do with a lot of these guys. And I think, if you are looking at a possibility of Bregman coming back, then the outfield might be a little bit of a better spot for some of these other prospects to find a home.
Yeah, so I know that the Astros they got Cam Smith. Cam Smith looks like the diamond in rough. He's the pride of the Astros farm system. They are probably, I don't know if they're going to rush him, but I guess it depends on the need. Like they don't need him at second base, at least right now. They don't need him at third base for the near future, depending on what happens with Bregman. But Cam Smith, he projects more as an infielder, but with the present state of the Astros, I guess, infield right now, could you see him transitioning to the outfield?
I'm not necessarily. I don't know. He does have a 60 grade arm, is, very strong for that third base position. I think he is a guy that, I think the Astros are lucky with half their games being in a spot that has, a short porch and left, and not, the balls aren't that deep other than that left center corner. So I think if there's an opportunity to slot him out there in left field, but I think beyond that, you're just kind of looking at a guy that'll play the corners and maybe second base. Offensively though, with Cam Smith, it jumps off the page. 6 home runs in 6 straight games there when he was in the Cubs system. But the thing that, he kind of got tacked for when he was at Florida State and coming into the draft was he did have issues with like a ground ball rate. And I think that's the one thing that kind of keep looking, kind of monitor once he's at AA and in spring training and Major League Camp this year. And if he gets up to AAA at some point too, which I think a lot of people might be expecting, just kind of, monitor those ground balls. He does have all the power, has a lot of offensive tools, and there's a reason he went in the first round to the Cubs, but still some things to work on there, especially just offensively with those ground balls, just making sure he's hitting more line drives.
Now, when we talk about all the guys that we got, I'd say all the guys. We got Juan Bello. We'll talk later about Alvarez. He's in the 2024 rankings. They've thrown him into the 23rd spot, right below Pedro Leon and above Kennedy Corona, above Alonzo Treadwell. And I believe you had Prospects Live last year rated him as the Cubs. As the Cubs' most underrated farmhand. So what do you like about Juan Bello? What does he need to work on? And how far out is this kid?
I think one of the first things you want to say is that he was a consistent pitcher in single A last year, which couldn't really say about some of these guys over in the Astros system. They did have a lot of college arms that started in Fayetteville, moved up rather quickly. A lot of those guys finished in AA. I can go down the list, even in like top 30s, anywhere you look. James Hicks was a guy who got all the way up to AA. Ethan Pecco got out of single A pretty fast. Same with Jackson Nezu. These were guys in their first full season in the Astros system, being in that 2023 draft class. So once those guys got out of there, you saw a lot of the, Latin American international free agents kind of take that step forward. But a lot of them, didn't see much success. I think, had to do in part with there were a couple of injuries. Juan Soto, whose name kind of gets tossed around because he has the same name as a multi-million-dollar man in New York right now. But I believe he had Tommy John surgery or something of the sort with his elbow and his pitching arm. So a lot of those, a handful of those guys got hurt. And, outside of Anderson Brito, who just really came on the scene as just this new international free agent that signed for nothing. There just wasn't much success at that level. That's not no knock on the pitching staff or pitching coaches or any of the development. There just wasn't really a lot of arms down there. And I think that's one of the big things you kind of looked for in this trade was a 20-year-old kid. And that was something that popped off the page about Juan Bello. Is like, yeah, maybe, the whip looked good under 1-2. Strikeout numbers were fine, 9 something per 9. Nice fastball, but the one thing I read is like he's throwing a little bit too many strikes right now, which can kind of be a problem sometimes when you're a little bit trying to be more accurate. So definitely, good numbers to see as a 20-year-old in single A, and the Astros farm system played him a handful of times. I think if you look at his highlight tape, his highlights, some of those outings are in Fayetteville. So they got eyes on him. And it's just one of those things, just a development piece moving forward, and to see him already get recognized in top 30s, which the Astros system is a little bit thinner than others, but it is a good sign that the Astros got a guy that they can kind of work with for these next couple of years.
Kenny, in a second, I do want to ask you a little bit more about Cam Smith, but we'll get back to that in a second. Guys, thank you for making us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go and check us out. We'll be back.
That's right. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams. and a lot of refs. I joke. Endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. So download the app today or head to FanDuel.com and get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59.
Hey guys, thank you for making us your first listen. Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, go ahead and check us out. So Kenny, I do want to ask you a little bit more about Cam Smith. I know that we're still trying to learn a little bit about him. I know that he went to, I believe he was at FanFest, but what type of player does he project as once he gets the big leagues? And are we going to see that this year, do you think?
Yeah, he's a guy that's probably going to play one of the corners, like we kind of mentioned earlier. And if he does get in the outfield, I think left field is probably the best suitable place. Just what you've seen from the Astros over these last couple of years, of course, like Chas McCormick, Michael Brantley have seen, the lion's share when you kind of think about who's been in left field in the 2020s. But at the same time, they haven't been scared of putting infielders out there, especially ones that have an arm on them. And he's great now with that 60-grade arm. But I think you're seeing a guy that has, a lot of the tools, and once you improve that ground ball rate, the power is endless, and I think that's one of the biggest things that you could see from him. It does have like a 50-grade power, but he gets the ball out, and I think that's one of your biggest things for a right-handed hitter at Minute Maid Park or Daikin Park now. So something just to think about. He's right-handed, and he's home runs were like what he was known for. He played only 32 games and hit 7 of them, but a lot of those just in a kind of a simple stretch there when he was in the Cubs system. So got to look out there. Last thing, I just kind of throw out there about him. He seems kind of, vibrant in a way that he does show his kind of like emotions when he was running on the field. I've never gotten a chance to actually speak with him. Had a very, short start to his minor league career, just getting drafted this past summer, but seems like a guy that can bring a lot of energy to a clubhouse. That's had that in the past couple of years. And when you do kind of look at, if he's going to make it up this year, I think it is kind of dependent on, is Alex Bregman going to be at the hot corner moving forward? Are the Astros going to sign someone to hold down that spot? And I think he is a guy that could push himself, by midsummer to get up to AAA if he's going to start in Corpus Christi, or it could be a guy that just comes out of spring training on fire and goes straight to AAA. But I don't know if that's the case. Only played in 32 games last year. But it's definitely one of the spots in Corpus Christi or Sugarland. See how it kind of goes in West Palm Beach at the start of spring training. But after that, I think it is kind of like, a safe bet to kind of assume maybe he does get a look, late into the year, just kind of depending on where his development is. And it's kind of like just like a lot of depending, what's going to happen here. What's the roster going to look like? I say there is a shot by the end of the year, but I think it's kind of safer to say 2026 would be the year for Cam Smith.
So we are not worried. Are you not concerned about maybe, let's say, who gets to the bigs first between Melton and Cam Smith? You think Cam Smith, just because of where he is in his development, probably takes a little bit longer? And since we're talking about 2025, do you think that Jacob Melton, I know Pedro Leon came up, they tried him. He didn't look super comfortable at the plate. I know he hit well in Sugarland. He really kind of turned it around offensively for the most part compared to where he was, still struck out a lot. But are we looking at guys like Melton and Leon coming up and contributing if maybe Chaz and Myers aren't doing enough to help the team? And I know Jacob Melton's not on the 40-man roster, is he?
He's not. And I want to kind of start there with Leon. There, he had to have had, better offensive numbers last year. It was his 4th year in AAA, not 4th full season, but 4th, 4th just year. You can kind of look at the numbers and break down those games, but He's been around, AAA for a while, and you wanted to see that eventually. And the walk numbers did improve, but he still was striking out. And I think at this point, he's just kind of be locked in as a guy that's going to be, fourth outfielder. Someone that can just provide you kind of defensive versatility at all three spots. But when you do look at it with Jacob Melton, yeah, I think he'd be a guy that gets up before Cam Smith, because one of the biggest things you hear Dana Brown talk about, if they don't get a left-handed bat, they might look at someone within the system to do that. And Jacob Melton's going to be in big league camp this year. And one of the biggest questions is, is he going to kind of burst on the scene? I mean, Joey Loperfido did that last year. You can go back even years before that. You see guys that just kind of have great spring trainings, and you wonder if it's going to translate right away. And I think the Astros are hesitant about that. They understand it. I mean, there's a lot of underlying data that, people don't see, and stuff behind the scenes that, kind of proves, let's not rush anything right now. And so maybe he's a guy that does it. I wasn't, impressed by maybe some of the offensive strides. He did kind of change his stance a little bit. I wrote about that a couple of times this past summer, but it seems like the power's kind of diminished a little bit, from his time at Oregon State and coming out of the draft. But he's still a guy that they probably want to look towards if they don't sign a left-handed outfielder, just, another left-handed bat to have in that lineup. And, talking about not being on the 40-man, there's always fringe guys. I mean, I can look at it right now and probably find you 3 pitchers that they'd be comfortable DFAing for them. And it's just what it kind of comes down to.
Yeah. So I know that the Astros have a lot of arms that they're probably going to have to look at this year. I know you kind of went over some of the outfield options. I think Melton's going to have a chance, but especially with Presley gone, they're definitely going to have to go into the kind of their depth of their farm system to see what they could do with the bullpen. And I know that we had the GM actually bring up some names. I know that I've been mentioning Forrest Whitley, and I know Brett's been mentioning Van Wy a lot. And so these are guys that he both mentioned as what guys that he feels can actually step up this year and fill a big thing. But he also mentioned Ort, like Dana Brown mentioned Ort. This is kind of weird after Ari Alexander mentioned Ort yesterday too, and he feels like Taylor Scott and who's that? Brian King could also be that bridge. But besides some of them, you could talk about Van Wy a little bit, but outside of those two guys, who do you see kind of taking a big leap from the minor leagues to the bullpen this year?
Yeah, I'll touch on Van Wy first. I've known him since the day that he announced that he was signing with the Astros. I've been following him forever. I think I confidently say I never expected this. You just don't see it a lot with UDFAs, but just something about those UDFAs in Missouri and Oklahoma and Arkansas that that the Astros keep, bringing in, and they make it pretty deep into the system. And with Logan, he throws from a weird arm slot. He's mentioned it to me before. He says, like, it looks like I've never learned how to throw before. He skipped single A right when he in his first full season. So the Astros, really believed in him. He was a workhorse last year. I remember at one point I was talking to him. He stopped pitching like right before the halfway point, and he was kind of confused. He thought he was getting traded, and they just wanted to kind of ease him back because he was throwing so much. So he does have like a lot of pitches in that arsenal, some good velocity behind him, and definitely a guy that they could probably, get some good evaluations on with a lot of the major league staff being around him in big league camp this year. But outside of those guys, looking at the top 30, of course, AJ Blueball is a guy that kind of been waiting on. There's going to be a handful of starting options that will come out of camp, and that'll probably impress a lot of people. And then you're kind of waiting on, is Lance McCullers and Luis Garcia going to be ready by, May or late April, just depending on when that is. And does that really offer many opportunities for a guy like Blueball? And Blueball's been in the bullpen before. They tested it out last year a little bit, just kind of giving him some opportunities. He is stronger as a starter, but someone that, to kind of monitor as well. And then left-hander. Colton Gordon. I think that's one of the things that some people kind of brought up recently, talking about Brian King and some of these other left-handed options. Do they go to Gordon here? Not a lot of velocity. He's always kind of been like a low 90s, high 80s on the fastball. Has a lot of good, spin and finesse though. And I think that's something that impresses a lot of people. And he can get deep into outings for a guy that's been in AAA. And then looking at minor leaguers today, there's a lot of pitch counts, not letting guys get deep. So those are two guys that just, outside of that list, that maybe they do kind of give a longer look in big league camp.
Yeah. So on Van Wide, one of the things that impresses me is his 9-1 record, his 3.22 ERA in the PCL, 98 strikeouts and 72.2 innings. I mean, Kenny, this kid's got. I mean, he pitches. He's only 6'2", but he pitches like he's 6'7". You know, he just seems to really have it. And when he came up, he made an impact. And you know, this was a fun team to watch. The Space Cowboys had quite a season, offensively and pitching wise, and so I love to hear that about our guys coming up, Colton, Gordon, AJ Blueball. But would they bring up Gordon or Blueball outside of a starting position, or would they only bring those guys up because they project them as starters? Are they not going to try to toy with that and keep them where they're stretched out if someone goes down with an injury or goes on the IL?
I think early in the season, you have to keep them stretched out. I think that has to be kind of your focus, especially when you're kind of a couple of guys down. You got JP France coming back from, I believe, a shoulder injury. I don't know. I'm paying too much attention to the major league team anymore. But, and of course, you have Luis Garcia and Lance McCullers not expected on opening day. So, you got to keep those guys stretched out. I think there will be, opportunities for spot starts. Yeah, throwing that out there. You saw that last year. Spencer Arrighetti had a spot start in Kansas City. He didn't really go as planned, probably, but, he kind of got his feet wet, and that's exactly what you want for some of these guys, to kind of push into a 6-man, especially early on in the season when some guys are still getting up to speed. And you've seen it before where a handful of arms probably don't start pitching until a couple, maybe like a week or so, into the Grapefruit League. So maybe there is a Brandon Belak role for one of these guys at some point, just kind of get in the bullpen. But early on, you want to still keep them as starters and keep them stretched out. And if there isn't a spot in the rotation, just keep them stretched out in AAA.
Okay. Guys, thank you for making us first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Check us out. Hey guys, we're back with the Locked On Astros podcast. We had a question from Supreme Panda, and I was trying to look up myself. Jairo Solis, he's still in the Astros farm system. I believe he missed the entire 2024 season with injury, but is he still a member of the Astros farm system?
Yeah, I don't really understand how at this point, just contract wise, I don't really comprehend it unless, they don't put anything on there about it being like a 2-year or anything like that. If, he was re-signed at all, but
right.
He didn't pitch in 2024, 2022, 2021, of course, not 2020 or 2019. There's a lot of injuries. Of course, he was a 40-man guy at one point, top prospect in the system, but a lot of injuries have stacked up. I think I still follow him on Instagram, and last year he was posting a lot in West Palm Beach. I thought at some point he was going to make it back up to AAA, but he didn't. But according to his transactions log, he's still in the Astros system, just not invited to big league camp this year.
So we do know that, they showed us the 5 guys that they're inviting to big league camp. Cam Smith was in that Logan Van Wy, I believe, is one of them. And, you've got guys coming in, Colton Gordon. But a guy that we can talk about that I think gives us a lot of intrigue is one with the last name Alvarez from Cuba, who's no relation to Jordan, but Kevin Alvarez, who was really one of the best minor league bats or prospects that a lot of scouts across the board raved about his hit tool. He's a left-hander. And tell us about Alvarez. Are you excited about this kid being in our system?
Yeah, I think one of the first things is, be hesitant about position players. And, things have changed over the years. But when you look at the current Astros roster, outside of Jose Altuve, which was a decade and a half ago, how many of those international free agents on that team, international players, came up through the Astros system? Or,
True.
Were originally signed by the Astros? Yeah, they traded for Jordan Alvarez, but kind of like an enigma of what he really became. And Yainer Diaz was a very fast riser after they traded for him. But Pedro Leon, they rushed him. I mean, they sent him right to AA and then sent him up to AAA. And like I mentioned, 4 years there, parts of 4 seasons, and it just really never really panned out for him. And I think that's one of the biggest things. They kind of messed with the development as well, putting him at shortstop, even though he really wouldn't admit it. And it just really didn't let him stick in the outfield. So it's just one of those things you just don't really see it. Freitas Nova was supposed to be one of the biggest things in the Astros system, and he retired at high A. So it's just one of those things to be hesitant when you see these kinds of things. Scouts change, development plans change, but there's been a lot of hype around Kevin that you've seen, and it's good to see you guys get in the system at a very young age, but also like 17, 18-year-old range. Don't expect him anytime soon. Let him season in the DSL this year, get him stateside of the FCL at some point. If that's, sometime this summer, even, if this summer, but, essentially probably next year. A lot of comparisons I've seen to even Kyle Tucker, which, how lanky he is and how much power he brings from the left side and such a natural arm in right field. It definitely, bodes well with what the Astros have liked at that right field position, but it is a couple years away. And it's just, like I said, be hesitant, be cautious about this. It's probably a better word. Be cautious just about position players that the Astros have brought up to the system, because not many really on this team that really came all the way through their scouting department and through FCL and then all the affiliates in the DCL. So they really struck gold on pitchers, especially pitchers that no one else is looking at. Anderson Brito, like I mentioned earlier, signed for nothing. So that's one of the bigger things is you like to see those pitchers. But with Kevin Alvarez, if everyone's kind of going after him, and Francis Romero is a good buddy of mine, he was reporting on him like crazy there for a while and knew about him before anyone else. He was mentioning a lot of teams were going after Kevin, and good for the Astros to get him. But be cautious and don't buy too much into rookie ball stats, and kind of let him just work his way up. And once he gets to single A, really kind of start to take a stronger look at him.
So, Kenny, Susan asked this question: can we say that Dana Brown is making good on his promise to improve the farm system? What is your take on the status of the farm system and what Dana Brown has done to improve it?
Yeah, I think you look back on the Justin Verlander trade, that was one of the biggest ones, trading 2 top 100 prospects. Funny enough, neither Gilbert or Clifford are in the top 100 now, according to a couple websites. I don't even think Baseball America, MLB Pipeline has either in there anymore. Gilbert was injured this past year, and Clifford kind of took a small step back. I was pretty bullish about Clifford, but getting Cam Smith, I think that's what you kind of talk about with what he wanted to do. They kind of recognize that their contract negotiations with Kyle Tucker just kind of got slimmer and slimmer. The possibility of bringing him back and going after a first rounder, a guy that they really didn't have a chance at drafting this past year. Big move for them, especially a guy that they're trying to replace, and trying to lock down a guy at the hot corner for the next couple 6, 7, 8 years, depending if they buy out some of that ARB, get him on another contract. And if Cam Smith really develops into something, that's exactly what they wanted to address. And smart on his part to do that and kind of pick up some of these other guys, Eric mentioned earlier, like diamonds in the rough. And I think that's one thing to continue to address and kind of build out that lower half of the pitching development as well. Cause you don't see a lot of draft guys come in and pitch right away in single A anymore, right when they get drafted in the summer, just with the draft being a little bit later. And bringing in arms that have experience in single A last year and kind of pushing them up into high A, and then maybe give them a chance at double A at the end of the year really bodes well just for next season too. So I think he is kind of taking that step forward, but at the same time, he has an owner that's recognized about winning now. And he's done it before where he's traded away prospects, hasn't really come back to, bite him too much. But it is definitely something that you're kind of recognizing, I think, this offseason with what Dana has done.
Yeah, it's hard to build a farm system when you keep on losing draft picks, because either you're signing somebody like Josh Hader, you're going over the luxury tax threshold, you're maybe going to be a second-time offender, you might have to give up some more. So it's hard to build up the farm system and continue to win, and that's what he's been tasked to do. And it's hard to do, so you have to be creative, and that's what he said he was going to do this offseason. I don't think any of us knew that he would have to trade Kyle Tucker, but I think at the time we all realized what he was trying to do. And so it's kind of a bad situation where the Astros are in, but they're still trying to win now. We saw the Yankees do this at one point where they traded Roldis Chapman and a couple other players, but they still had eyes on winning the championship that year. So the Astros have maybe not the sexy farm system, but they have moved up a little bit in some of the rankings. They're no longer dead last. I believe the Yankees are second to last. Are we seeing a little bit more respect across the MLB with in terms of the Astros farm system?
Yeah, and I think that trade to get Cam Smith is the one that does it. That just happens with not really having a high draft pick, and this summer it will be one of the highest draft picks they've had probably since I was in high school. If that makes you guys feel a little old, I'm not that old, but it is one of those things where they're going to have a higher draft pick, and that's definitely going to boost the ratings in the farm system. It all just kind of comes down to so a lot of those top guys at the top, and having top 100 guys really boosts the way that your farm system looks. It's not always just the depth of it, but if you're like the Cubs and you have possibly 9 to 10 top 100 guys, you're going to be the top farm system. And if you want that respect, sometimes you have to trade away these guys and continue to kind of build for the future. And I think the Astros put themselves in a spot where they're not really selling away the current product. They're still trying to win now and still trying to build for the future at the same time.
So real quick, maybe 60 seconds or so, any impact hitters we see making the major league roster this year from the minor leagues?
That's a good one. I just kind of closed my tab there, but I mean, looking at guys just in big league camp, I was actually looking at some of these position players. I don't really know. Just from the non-roster invitees, Jesus Bastidas, Brett and I had kind of conversation about him, kind of really just kind of came out of nowhere, really a depth guy. But I think at some point you might see Bryce Matthews. I think it's one of those things where he did have really good strides at high A, very hitter-friendly ballpark, double A, up and down. Triple A was kind of like the same thing. So if he kind of puts it all together, maybe he's a guy that makes an impact by the end of the summer. Maybe he comes up in September.
Okay. Well, guys, I know a lot of you are still a little bit hurt about Joey Loperfido leaving, but Kikuchi was here, and he had one in the most dominant stretch of any pitcher that's traded to the Astros since Randy Johnson did. So I don't think that the Astros regret making that trade. I wish they probably could have signed Kikuchi. I wish they would have gone deeper and then just to the wild card series against the Tigers, but you can't go back. And I know he would look good in right field right now, but you can't keep on going back and looking at it. So all we got to do now is look for who's next. Who's the next man to step up? And that's why we have people like Kenny here to just tell us about the guys of the future. That's why you need to go ahead and make sure you tune in to Astros Future all year round. He'll keep you up to date, Tim and Jimmy, with all the prospects that you need to know about. And we'll have them on to talk about those prospects. And I'm excited to see what's coming up, because I think this year, especially in the outfield, it's going to be a revolving door until you find somebody that clicks. And if that person that clicks in left field is Jose Altuve, go for it. But we still got to figure out what's to do in center field and right field. So, Brett, any closing thoughts?
I just want to say, Kenny, thanks again. We always enjoy having you on. Eric and I talk about it. We get multiple messages after each show, and you're one of the guests that people rave about the most. I know Mama Wheelhouse approves, and if Mama Wheelhouse approves, then that's the only stamp of approval we need, because she gets on to me more than she gets on to Eric. So if you can win that woman over, then you've got it. You struck gold, sir. But seriously, continued success on your reporting. I know you don't just do baseball, but I look forward to hanging out with you, talking to you in the press box there in Sugarland, and watching the Space Cowboys try to win another title, right?
Yeah, definitely a team that has some major leaguers, and that's your former major leaguers. That's exactly how they built it last year. I got one quick thing I've meant to say about Logan Van Wy, and this kind of goes back to the Astros scouting department. I won't name who he is, but an Astros scout went to watch him pitch, and all the other MLB scouts were leaving. They said, don't even bother. And he went in and still watched him. They found Logan Van Wy, and that kind of goes, a pretty long way of giving a kid a shot. And now he's knocking at the door of the major leagues, and the GM is mentioning his name. So just something to monitor. Follow me on X at the Vandalorian. Follow Jimmy Price at Astros Future, and subscribe to all of Jimmy's stuff as well.
All right, guys, that's all we got for this edition of Locked On Astros podcast. And I'm one of those guys that misses the Skeeters. I wish they didn't change the name. So, guys, we'll see you next time. We'll we'll jump in if anything happens with the Bregman saga. But until then, the drama continues. Thank you, Kenny. Brett, what do we always say?
Go Stros.
We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Kenny.
Skeeters. That just sounded so much better than Space Cowboys.
I like Space Cowboys. Some